Here is the uncomfortable part about the next AI model race. The most important release in June may not be the model with the best benchmark. It may be the model that shows up in the place where people already work. Right now, 3 names are moving through the AI rumor cycle: GPT-5, 6, Claude, 4.8, Sonnet, and Gemini, 3.5 Pro. If you follow AI closely, you know how this starts. Somebody sees a model string. A canary route gets mentioned. A source map leak turns into a thread. Google says the stronger Gemini model is expected after its May announcement, and within a few hours, the whole AI internet is back to the same question: who wins? I think that is the wrong question. The model numbers are the headline. The real fight is who becomes the default AI workflow. So this is not a launch confirmation video. It is a prediction video. As of the 28th of May, 2026, OpenAI has not confirmed GPT-5, 6. Anthropic has not announced Claude 4.8 Sonnet. Google has given the strongest official signal here because it said in May that Gemini 3.5 Pro was already being used internally and was expected to begin rolling out the following month. But even for Google, the final API ID, pricing, benchmarks, and full product rollout are still not public. That uncertainty is exactly why this is worth watching, because the AI market is not only fighting over intelligence anymore, it is fighting over defaults. OpenAI wants ChatGPT, Codex, and the API to remain the place where serious AI work begins. Anthropic wants Claude to stay the model that developers and enterprise teams trust when the work actually matters. Google wants to prove that distribution is not just a backup plan, it can be the advantage. That is the real June fight: product default, trusted workhorse, distribution machine. And behind all 3 is the question nobody can avoid for very long: who pays for the inference? Longer context windows, more tool calls, web search, files, code execution, image input, agent loops, and multimodal reasoning all make AI more useful. They also make it more expensive to serve. A frontier lab cannot win forever by saying, "Our model is smarter," if every real workflow gets too expensive to run. So when you hear GPT-5, 6, Claude, 4.8 Sonnet, or Gemini, 3.5 Pro, do not only ask, is it better? Ask where it lives. Does it live in the chat app people already open? Does it live in the IDE where developers spend the day? Does it live inside search, email, documents, cloud tools, enterprise systems, and mobile operating systems? Does it already have the user's files, account, permissions, billing, and habit? That is where the money is. Let's start with OpenAI. The official baseline here is GPT-5. 5, not GPT-5. 6. OpenAI's GPT-5. 5 API documentation lists a 1,050,000 token context window, a 128,000 token max output, text and image input, text output, and a standard API price of $5 per million input tokens and $30 per million output tokens. Cached input is much cheaper, at 50 cents per million tokens. There is also a long context pricing rule. Above 272,000 input tokens, the full session gets more expensive, with 2 times input pricing and 1.5 times output pricing. That last detail is the quiet part. A giant context window is a great demo. It is not automatically a good business. If you are building a product, the question is not just, can I put 1 million tokens into the prompt? The question is, can this be used every day without turning the cost structure into a problem? That is why a possible GPT-5, 6 matters less as a name and more as a signal. OpenAI's advantage is not just model quality. It is the surface area around the model. ChatGPT is the consumer habit. Codex is the developer work surface. The API is the builder and enterprise surface. If GPT-5, 6 shows up, the first thing I would watch is not a leaderboard. I would watch the surface. Does it land first in ChatGPT? In Codex? In the API? In an enterprise tier? In a developer preview? That tells you what OpenAI thinks the model is for. If it strengthens Codex, the message is developer workflow. If it improves long context API work, the message is enterprise and builder infrastructure. If it appears first in ChatGPT, the message is product default and consumer perception. The rumor layer is useful, but only if we keep it in its lane. Secondary reports have pointed to Codex Canary or routing log chatter. Some mention an Iris Alpha codename. Some claim a larger context window around 1.5 million tokens, with a 900,000 token stable input claim. None of that is official OpenAI confirmation. It belongs in the watch list, not the fact column. Still, the rumor makes sense because it points to the right battlefield. OpenAI does not just need a model that can answer harder questions. It needs a model that makes work easier in a way users actually feel. Can it read more of a code base without losing the plot? Can it make fewer broken edits? Can it run tools more reliably? Can it keep an agent loop on task? Can it take a messy repository, make a plan, patch files, run tests, and explain the change without wasting the developer's afternoon? That is why Codex is more important than it may look from the outside. A coding model is not just another demo category. Coding is one of the few AI workflows where the answer can be tested. The patch applies or it does not. The test passes or it fails. The agent saves time or it becomes another thing to manage. If OpenAI owns that loop, it owns part of the developer workday, and that is more valuable than winning a one-week discourse cycle on X. The risk for OpenAI is expectation. When OpenAI ships a model, people expect a step change. Better is not enough. The product has to feel faster, cheaper, more capable, less annoying, and harder to leave. And every competitor is attacking a different part of that default. Claude is competing for high-trust work. Google is competing through distribution. Open-weight models are getting good enough for more tasks at the edge. So, if the June chatter around GPT-5-6 turns out to be wrong, the strategic question does not go away. OpenAI still has to keep turning frontier capability into default behavior. And if GPT-5-6 does appear, the real test is simple. Does it make ChatGPT, Codex, and the API feel more like one work platform or just another model name? Now go to Anthropic. Claude 4.8 Sonnet is a different kind of rumor. Anthropic has not announced it. The usable claim is not that Anthropic confirmed the model. The usable claim is that secondary reports point to a Sonnet 4.8 string appearing in Claude code-related artifacts, such as source map or NPM package discussions. That could be a planning artifact. It could be an internal configuration. It could be a test label. It could be something that never ships under that exact name. So why talk about it? Because Sonnet is where Anthropic's business is easiest to understand. Opus is the prestige lane. Haiku is the speed and cost lane. Sonnet is the workhorse. It is the model line that has to be good enough for serious developers, analysts, writers, operators, and enterprise teams, without being priced like an unlimited luxury good. The current official baseline is Claude Sonnet 4.6. On the API pricing side, that baseline is $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. Batch pricing is lower. Cache reads and writes have their own economics. The pricing docs also give a current baseline for 1 million token context on the Claude API and platform, though we should not pretend every Claude product surface exposes the same context in the same way. The important thing is not the exact rumor name. It is what Anthropic has to defend. OpenAI is trying to be the product default. Google is trying to be the distribution default. Anthropic is trying to be the trusted work default. That is a real lane. Among US AI power users, Claude has a specific reputation. It is often the model people try when they want better writing, cleaner reasoning, stronger code help, or fewer strange failures in long-form work. That reputation is not the same as an objective benchmark. It is a market position. But reputation does not pay the inference bill by itself. If Claude is too expensive, developers route around it. If it is too slow, agents break down. If the integrations are weaker, users may respect Claude and still spend most of their day in ChatGPT, Google Workspace, GitHub, or Microsoft tools. That is the pressure on a future Sonnet update. If Claude 4.8 Sonnet is real, or if Anthropic ships a differently named Sonnet upgrade, I would watch 3 things. First, coding reliability. Not just, can it solve a benchmark? More like, can it stay grounded inside a messy repo, understand the intent, make a small safe change, and avoid overconfident edits? Second, long work reliability. Can it reason across long documents and multi-step enterprise tasks without losing the thread? Third, price discipline. Can Anthropic keep Sonnet close to the workhorse economics that make it attractive, or does the premium creep up? That third point matters because the enterprise buyer is not buying a model in isolation. They are buying a risk posture. They care about data handling, admin controls, legal comfort, reliability, support, and whether they can explain to a security team why this model is allowed inside the company. Anthropic has built much of its identity around that trust layer. So the question is not, Does Claude beat GPT on one benchmark? The better question is, when a company builds an AI workflow that employees use every week, does Claude become the model they trust enough to keep? That is the Sonnet story. If the source map rumor goes nowhere, Anthropic still has the same strategic problem. It has to turn quality trust into default usage before distribution-heavy competitors make the choice for the user. Now Google. Gemini 3.5 Pro is the least rumor-driven item in this watch list. Google has already said something official. In May 2026, Google announced Gemini 3.5 Flash and said Gemini 3.5 Pro was already being used internally and was expected to begin rolling out the following month. That does not mean we know the final Gemini 3.5 Pro specs. We do not. We do not have the final API ID, final pricing, final benchmark set, or full product coverage. But compared with GPT-5, 6, and Claude 4.8, Sonnet, the window is more concrete, and the Google question is very different. The mistake is to cover Google as if it is only another frontier model lab. Google has Search, Android, Workspace, YouTube, Cloud, AI Studio, Android Studio, Gemini Enterprise, the Gemini app. That is a distribution map no independent lab can copy. The question is whether Google can make it feel like one product instead of a pile of powerful pieces. Gemini 3.5 Flash shows the strategy. Google placed it across the Gemini app, AI mode in Search, Google Anti-Gravity, the Gemini API in AI Studio and Android Studio, and Gemini Enterprise. Google also reported strong launch benchmarks for Flash, including Terminal Bench 2.1, GDP Val AA, MCP Atlas, and Chark-Sieve Reasoning. Those are Google reported numbers, not independent final judgment, but they show the pitch. Fast, agentic, multimodal, and everywhere. The pricing tells another part of the story. Gemini 3.5 Flash has a standard API price of $1.50 per million input tokens and $9 per million output tokens. Batch and Flex are cheaper. Priority is more expensive. Grounding through Search and Maps has a separate query-based price after the free daily quota. That matters because Google's AI business is not only token pricing. It is token pricing plus search grounding, maps grounding, cloud usage, enterprise packaging, subscriptions, and distribution bundles. That is the Google advantage. If Gemini 3.5 Pro launches in June, I would not start with, does it beat GPT and Claude everywhere? I would start with, where does Google put it? If it sits mostly in AI Studio, it is a developer product. If it moves through Search, Workspace, Android, Cloud, and enterprise workflows, it becomes infrastructure. That is how distribution changes the model race. A slightly weaker model inside the default workflow can beat a stronger model that users have to remember to open. And if the model is genuinely strong, distribution turns into a multiplier. The risk for Google is not reach. It has reach. The risk is coherence. Do users understand which Gemini model they are using? Does the experience feel consistent across Search, Workspace, Android, Cloud, and the Gemini app? Do developers understand the price? Do enterprise buyers understand what they are deploying? Does the product feel native, or does it feel like several AI strategies sharing one brand name? That is the Google test. Gemini 3.5 Pro could be the most important June watch item, not because it is the loudest rumor, but because Google is the company most capable of turning a model into ambient infrastructure. Before putting the three side by side, it is worth asking what would prove this whole frame wrong. For OpenAI, the bearish version is simple. GPT-5, 6 shows up, but it feels like a spec bump. The benchmarks are a little better. The context window is larger. The API looks impressive. But Codex does not feel meaningfully more reliable. ChatGPT does not feel more useful for real work. And enterprise users do not get a clearer reason to move more workflow into OpenAI's stack. In that world, the model may be better, but the default does not get stronger. For Anthropic, the risk is almost the opposite. Claude can remain excellent and still lose usage. If a Sonnet upgrade is high quality but expensive, hard to access, or weakly distributed, then Anthropic keeps the reputation but loses the daily habit. That is a dangerous place to be in AI. People can admire a model and still not build around it. For Google, the failure mode is product confusion. Gemini 3.5 Pro could be strong, fast, and technically impressive. But if users do not know where it lives, which Gemini tier they are using, how pricing works, or why it behaves differently across Google products, then distribution becomes less powerful. Reach without clarity is not the same as default. That is why I would not score June by a single benchmark table. I would score it by whether each company makes the next step obvious. OpenAI needs the work platform to feel more real. Anthropic needs trust to turn into repeat usage. Google needs its giant distribution map to feel like one coherent AI product. Put the three together, and the market is easier to read. OpenAI is defending product default. Anthropic is defending trusted workhorse default. Google is attacking with distribution default. Each company has a different path to the same prize, becoming the place where AI work starts. OpenAI's advantage is habit. ChatGPT is still the mental default for a huge number of users. If Codex keeps improving, OpenAI can extend that habit into developer work. If the API stays strong, it keeps builders close. OpenAI's risk is expectation and cost. Every new model has to feel meaningfully better, and the more useful the workflows become, the more expensive they may be to serve. Anthropic's advantage is trust. Claude has a premium position among people who care about quality work. If Sonnet remains strong at rational pricing, Anthropic can own a valuable lane without being everywhere. Anthropic's risk is distribution. Being admired is not the same as being default. If users respect Claude, but live inside ChatGPT, Google, GitHub, or Microsoft tools, Anthropic has to fight for every workflow. Google's advantage is reach. Search, Android, Workspace, Cloud, and developer tools create a surface that no frontier lab can easily replicate. Google's risk is execution. Distribution only matters if the AI experience is coherent, reliable, and easy to understand. This is why June matters even if some rumors are wrong. The rumors are not the foundation of the argument. They are the market's way of expressing pressure. OpenAI is under pressure to move from chatbot to work platform. Anthropic is under pressure to prove that high-trust AI can be a large business, not just a quality reputation. Google is under pressure to convert distribution into daily usage before someone else owns the workflow. So here is the practical watch list. First, watch the surface. If a model appears, does it show up in chat, API, coding, enterprise, mobile, search, or internal preview? The surface tells you the strategy. Second, watch the real price, not just the headline token price. Cached input, long context surcharges, batch pricing, priority pricing, grounding fees, and subscriptions can matter more than the number on the first pricing table. Third, watch whether bigger context actually changes the workflow. A million token window is useful only if retrieval, attention, memory, speed, and cost make it usable. Fourth, watch coding and agent reliability. Demos are easy, repos are messy, tests fail, tools break. The model that handles that mess is the one that gets closer to real work. Fifth, watch distribution. The model that wins may not be the one with the cleanest leaderboard screenshot. It may be the one already inside the tool people open at 9 a.m. That is the whole point. The June AI fight is not really GPT-5. 6 versus Claude, 4.8. Sonnet versus Gemini, 3.5 Pro. It is a fight over defaults. Who becomes the default for chat? Who becomes the default for coding? Who becomes the default for enterprise reasoning? Who becomes the default inside search, documents, cloud, and mobile? And who can afford to serve that default at scale? If you only follow the model number, you will miss the business. The model number tells you what the company wants the market to talk about. The workflow tells you where the money may go. So the real question for June is not which model wins the headline. It is which company becomes harder to replace.